This episode is sponsored by Northeast Ford and Catskill View Weddings. Hey, Mary, what's up?
Hey, Thorin, we've got a good guest today.
Yeah, I am so excited for Abby to be here. Why don't you tell us all about Abby Auerbach?
So, Abby is the Executive Vice President and Chief Communications Officer at the Television Bureau of Advertising.
That's a mouthful.
It is, and I'm glad she's the one doing the communicating about it. She is such a proponent of mentorship for women in broadcasting and in general.
That's awesome.
And she manifests that in a couple of different ways. She founded and is the executive director of TVB Next Women, which helps women aspire and launch into leadership roles in broadcast television.
Wow.
She is also involved in mentoring. She runs it and University for the People. And she is just dedicated to this notion of mentoring and how it can transform professional and personal lives. And she takes that responsibility very, very seriously and wants to pay forward and backward the help that she's received and help bring up another generation of women in a field that doesn't have a lot of them. So I think Abby's going to have a lot for us today that listeners will be able to learn from.
So why don't we just dive into it?
Why don't we just do it?
Northeast Ford offers great sales and service, including a no-charge pickup and delivery for any service, even with oil changes. And they offer 2-year unlimited oil changes with any vehicle purchase, new or pre-owned.
Northeast Ford makes buying, selling, or trading in your car super easy. They have charging stations for your electric vehicle and a ready cash now offer and vehicle check on the spot if you wish to sell your vehicle. And they provide help with all the paperwork.
They service 6 counties, and they are located at 182 Route 44 in Millerton, where you can swing by and see Lan and his great sales team.
Or visit them online at www.northeastfordmillerton.com. Abby, welcome to Main Street Moxie this week. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you, ladies. I'm delighted to be here.
Thanks for coming in person, too.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's even more exciting. So, Abby, you have a very impressive biography and resume, and it just screams Moxie throughout your career. And I was wondering, well, we always start off the conversation with, what is your definition of Moxie?
You know, to me, Moxie is one part chutzpah and one part intention. So maybe chutzpah needs a definition too. So, you know, in this context, I think of chutzpah as being nerve. You know, when you refer to somebody, they had a lot of nerve to go out there and do that. But nerve without intention can get you into trouble. So I think Moxie is the intention part of it. And I don't think that it always comes naturally.
No.
Yeah. Do you have an example of when in your career or in your life, in your personal life, where chutzpah met intention to form Moxie?
So I think with Moxie's born out of courage. And courage is born out of risk-taking and having successes along the way, even small successes that one can build on the other. And I think over the course of my life and my profession and my professional life, I had those building blocks to get to a place where you might call Moxie now. And it was a journey, because I am not like Sarah, whose interview I enjoyed so much on your podcast, who was born with Moxie and at 6 years old could identify herself as having Moxie. I had a journey of gaining confidence professionally and personally, and risk-taking. Each time I felt a little more confident, putting myself out there a little bit more, and then turning that courage into what you're calling Moxie, I think, today. So the Moxie experience for me has been a personal journey and a personal growth.
You know, it's interesting you bring up Sarah, because one of the things I remember from that at the end when she was giving some advice was take small risks.
Yeah.
And I think that that incremental nature of Moxie is, we talked about in another podcast with Judith Monachina, how we see the end result, but we often don't see the steps that went into it. So how did you, what were the environment that allowed you to develop this Moxie professionally? Because now you're the Executive Vice President and Chief Communications Officer at Television Bureau of Advertising. You didn't start there.
No, I didn't. I absolutely didn't. So I have a personal mantra that has been a guiding inspiration for me, and that is every day do something that scares you.
Oh.
And it's something that I came upon years and years and years ago, and to this day, I still think about it. And it could be personal or professional, and maybe picking up the phone and calling somebody that you're not so sure about, you're maybe a little intimidated by, taking on a project that might feel a little bit outside your scope or comfort zone, and taking those incremental steps or little risks, and every day doing something that scares you. And with that, I have found a lot of building blocks that have led to what success I've had in my career. And yes, one of the areas that I think I developed Moxie throughout my career is that I primarily work in the broadcast television industry. And as the Chief Communications Officer of TVB, I run PR and communications, our events, advocacy for the television stations across the country. This is their trade association. But primarily, they're all men.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a very male-dominant.
Very male-dominated. Yeah. And while many of those men are wonderful allies and have been great mentors to me, I often find myself sitting at a table and being the only woman at the table.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes I'm leading the meeting. So it's been a very interesting exploration. Now, another ingredient in that, I guess, for me, is that I also come from a family of mostly all men. So I have brothers, I have sons, I have nephews. So navigating a male world is not completely unfamiliar to me, but doing it professionally is a new challenge. And again, every day do something that scares you. Show up in a way, stand in your power. And that, I think, has given me the courage and the ingredients to gain the Moxie that I have today.
Wow. I'm trying to think of something to do that will scare me. But you do that across the board, whether it's your personal life, social life, picking up a new interest. It's not just in your professional life that you do some things that scare you.
No, that's true. And I think in everybody's life, if you sit back and say, what's on my procrastination list? What is it that I'm not doing, that I'm putting off? You know, there's no such thing as procrastination. The issue is, what is it about that task that I'm afraid to do? Right. I'm afraid that I can't do it, I won't be successful, I don't know how. And if you unpack that and you solve for that, you can move through the block, the procrastination. And there's doing something that scares you. There's an opportunity for overcoming fear and taking a risk and having success to build on.
Right. That reminds me of something Thorin always says to me when...
Oh, boy.
It's just work, Mary. It's just work.
There you go. It's not brain surgery.
Yeah, no. It's just work.
No matter what it is. I want to say that the last 5 minutes, what keeps popping in my head with everything you talked about, the building blocks, et cetera, is self-awareness. I feel like you need to have a certain self-awareness to realize you need to take a risk. You need to, you know, all the little things you've been talking about. Is that, you feel part of your Moxie as well? Just that you're so self-aware, or?
I think self-awareness is really important. I hadn't thought about that before. But giving yourself permission and understanding yourself and understanding the places that you want to take challenges and the gaps maybe in certain aspects of your life that you want to fill and explore.
Right.
And then sometimes those things are a little scary. I do think that being a working mom takes Moxie. And, you know, you don't have to have a profession and a title and commute on the New York City subways to have Moxie. Being a working mom really is a huge endeavor and comes with it so many challenges at any level of professional and personal life. So I give every working mom a lot of credit.
Yeah, me too. Well, we all are.
Yeah.
One. Right?
right? Takes one to know one.
Exactly. We wanted to talk a bit about a thread, a very, very thick and strong thread that runs through the information you sent us about yourself, and that is your dedication to mentoring. So you're involved with a couple of organizations that really leapt out at me, and they are She Runs It and University for the People. And you are a mentor for both of those organizations, as well as the founder of TVB's Next Women. So can you talk a little bit about how those organizations play into your life, and then we'll get into specifics about what you view mentoring as?
So I'm a big believer in each one of us as we go through our life journey, looking behind, reaching behind, and helping those that are coming up behind us. Because, experience is something that you get just after you need it.
Right.
And so those of us that are coming up behind haven't gotten that experience yet and can benefit so much from those that are ahead, especially the young women. Mm-hmm. And I think that Moxie is something, as I mentioned, that you don't necessarily have it as an intrinsic quality that you were born with, but it could be in there and needs to be invited and shaped and cultivated. And it's hard to know how to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
And having a mentor that can see that in you and help you develop it is enormously powerful. So I see the young women coming up behind me, professionally and personally, and I feel like I have a calling and a responsibility to assist them in any way that I can with the experiences that I've had and the learnings that I've gained and what I can share to help them light their path. And from that comes a lot of relationships that I have with women in their 20s, in their 30s, that are looking for professional guidance and sometimes personal guidance too. So 2 years ago, I went to the board of directors at TVB and pitched them on creating Next Women for local broadcast television, the industry that I work in, because as we spoke about, it's such a male-dominated business, and there are so many talented women, and for numerous reasons, women haven't, in the past, really been breaking through that glass ceiling. And it's an opportune time now. The world is changing. There's raised awareness about women's capabilities, diversity, and I thought it was a moment to seize. And so I am now the executive director of Next Women. It'll be our 2-year anniversary in March.
Wow.
We have over 1,700 participants.
Wow.
Primarily Next Women, but also many of their male allies. And we do a lot of work to identify and prepare and advocate for women in local broadcast television who are seeking advancement in their careers. And sometimes that conversation also spills over to their personal lives, because having a supportive partner and a partner that understands the sacrifices and challenges of career advancement is essential to fueling each partner's advancement. And those aren't always the easiest things to discuss in a relationship. So advocating for yourself, effective communication, learning the skills that you need for advancement, not being afraid to raise your hand, stepping out of your comfort zone. The list goes on and on and on. And those feelings and those traits and that interest in advancing is something that can start midway in your career. It can start early in your career. But I really think the feeder for that is for younger women who start to see themselves as accomplished. And accomplished can take so many different shapes and forms. But there's an opportunity to ignite that moxie and for them to have that courage. And it's because I so strongly believe in that through an introduction, Mary, that you made for me with Principal Strever at Whoosey, that he and I are talking about a mentoring program for the women at the Region 1 High School.
That's amazing. So I'm really pleased that introduction took root. And is your mentoring for a 16 to 18-year-old different than it would be for a woman post-college in their career?
Absolutely. Because most of the girls, young women in that age group as juniors and seniors in high school haven't yet formulated a self-vision, a self-awareness of where they want to take their lives.
Right.
And that's good. I mean, they should be on a path of exploration.
Yes.
Some girls, some kids, I want to be a veterinarian, and they just know that. Or I want to be a musician or rock star. They just know that. But most of us find our way, and we find our path. We step through doors, and all of a sudden options open, and we choose a path, and then that leads to another path. But you have to be willing to open that door. You have to be willing to be curious. You have to be willing to ask questions and avail yourself of opportunities. And I think that's such an important piece of the confidence going forward that is so essential, that if I can facilitate that and help that in the young women, that would be so satisfying to me and hopefully beneficial to them.
Oh, I totally imagine it's just a home run for them, winning the lottery, to have someone drop into their life that unearths a latent Moxie that they never knew that they had. I think that's a really important, something that you said before about you or somebody just noticing something about a younger person or a younger professional and drawing that out of them, and maybe they didn't realize that they had it. And I think it's the noticing, the seeing, that empowers people to take a next step.
That is so true. So early in my career, I had a mentor, and he saw things in me that I could not yet imagine. He imagined a future for me that was beyond my vision and grasp. And it was with his support, and tutelage, and opening doors and helping me network that really paved a path for me. I've also worked with an executive coach for many, many years in my career, and that's been a fantastic experience. And one of the sayings that she has given me, and it's a gift, is to stand in my power. And you know how often that rings true when you need to advocate for yourself, whether it's professionally or personally, to just stand in your power, to hold your head up high and sit up straight and walk into that room and know that you're prepared and that you can own what you came there to do. And it's very empowering, and it sets you up for all kinds of great Moxie experiences.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was just going to say, is it perhaps also, an outsider's perspective looking in, that, just like your mentor, that it's things that you in your world, in your life circumstances and experiences may not even have thought of. So it's a different train of thought, a different life experience and viewpoint that can also make you look at things, as I always like to say, a little sideways. Instead of looking something straight on, you go, if I look at it this way, or just like he saw your future in a very different way. So you think that outsider's perspective is important also in some of the mentoring?
Yes, 100%. Because the mentor comes to every situation with a different set of experiences and perspectives, and doesn't have the filter of any kinds of other perceptions about this person.
Right.
So it's an open slate. And to Mary's question about, the younger girls in high school, it is absolutely a whole different mentoring experience because they're just 17 or 18 years old.
Right.
And there are so many things that they have yet to experience, and you can't go out too far with them. Really need to follow their lead. So I'm actually working with a wonderful young woman right now who is applying to college and believes that she wants to be a documentary filmmaker, and to explore what that means to her, to give her an opportunity to express what she thinks that will look like, and how that might materialize. And so as her mentor, I see a role for me in giving her as many opportunities as I can to be introduced to people who are doing that kind of work.
Right.
And so I was able to, through my relationship with the TV stations around the country, to make a connection for her with the CBS station in Hartford, WFSB, who happens to have as their general manager and president a woman leader. And so I arranged for my mentee to have a shadow internship in the newsroom.
That's amazing.
Documentary filmmaking, news and journalism, get into a room, see what the producers do, how is all that content edited. And we had a wonderful discussion about what her expectations should be for a day like that, how to show up, how to network, how to write thank you notes.
Yep.
And it was an extraordinary experience for her and a super satisfying experience for me, because this was a baby step, but boy, it opened up just so many avenues of possibilities of thinking.
Absolutely.
I'd say a big baby step.
Big baby step,
that's
exactly.
a huge thing.
Regarding your role as mentor, what do you think makes an effective mentor? What are the qualities that you've cultivated in yourself or that have benefited you? And in turn, what do you think makes a good mentee? Because it is a relationship.
It's absolutely a relationship. And the mentor gets as much out of it as the mentee does. I think mentees sometimes don't realize. They think, oh, I'm a burden, or I'm asking so much time from this person. But the truth is, in a really good relationship, there's benefit to both. I certainly get so much out of my mentee relationships and have grown. And it's informed me so many ways in my management style, managing younger employees, in my parenting style, parenting 20-something sons. There really is a tremendous amount to gain. But what makes a good mentor, I think, is the ability to really listen and to take apart and unpack a lot of what your mentee is talking about. And the more they talk, the more you see, the more they learn. They will reveal things that frighten them, places they're not sure about going, questions they haven't asked. You know, sometimes they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And the mentor has the opportunity to dig into that and explore that. You know, let's take a little closer look at this, and what do you think about that, and how might this work? And there's a great language that my executive coach uses. She'll say to me, you know, Abby, I wonder, and that's always code for, I have an idea for you, but I'm not really sure you're open to hearing it.
Also, I'm curious.
Right,
another
exactly.
way to start that one.
Exactly. And curiosity, Mary, is so key to this. I think on the mentee side, bringing curiosity is absolutely the way to win at this game and to be a successful mentee. To open up the curiosity, to know and understand that you're safe with your mentor. Building trust is extremely important.
Right.
But having curiosity, to be willing to look outside of that bubble of vision that you have at whatever point in your life you're in, and accept the fact that maybe there's something else I should consider, or another way, to Thorin's point, to look at this or to come at this, and to be self-aware and understand, here are some places that I need some guidance or instruction and I'm a little stuck. I think it's really good to work on stuck stuff in a mentor-mentee relationship.
Our next sponsor is someone that I have a personal connection with. Catskill View Weddings and Event is where I got married. Mary, you were one of our guests.
I was one of your guests, and I have to tell you, you making your grand entrance on the crest of the hill during sunset was pretty dramatic.
On horseback, too?
On horseback, and I nudged my husband and said, why didn't we do this?
Well, it is, we made some beautiful photos that are on the website that Catskill View uses, and there have been some other beautiful, beautiful weddings there, but the selling point is definitely the view. It is a 360-degree unobstructed view of the Catskill Mountain Range. Looking, sometimes you can see the Ashwaubenon down in New Paltz all the way up to Albany, but the sunset there is spectacular, and we were so lucky when we got married in October with the foliage and the sun, and almost all of our friends and family's profile pictures for the next 6 months were with the sunset and the view. And to learn more, please visit www.catskillviewweddings.com.
And by the way, Thorin is still married.
Yes. One of the things we always ask, and Mary and I are considering changing the word, but how do you view failure? But I think, in this instance, talking about mentors and mentees, how do you help someone that you're mentoring to overcome a challenge, if we can phrase it that way? And you can address that too for your own personal life, how you kind of view challenges, failures. I was just curious specifically in the mentor-mentee capacity, how that is worked through.
I like the word setback.
That's a good one, yeah.
Okay.
Because it doesn't mean, failure to me is like, oh, it's colossal.
So definitive too.
It's so definitive,
Yeah.
right. And there are some really great thoughts out there about failure. People say fail fast. And, you'll never succeed unless you fail because it means you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Personally, I hate failure. This whole idea of failure does not work for me. But that's because I obsess about preparation. I obsess about overcoming objections,
Right.
anticipating what might happen next. And I think that for me, as I said, I look at things as setbacks. So maybe something didn't go the way I wanted it to. What parts of it did? How can I shift
Right.
in order to, it's like when you're shifting a car, you downshift and then you swing over and then you upshift again.
Yeah.
And so, how do I put myself back in neutral for a moment and assess what's just happened and then take the workable pieces of that and then re-engage with them. And it's not so easy to do sometimes because you can feel really bad when you have a setback.
Yeah.
But you really have to give yourself a moment to absorb that and then go on.
There's
and
no
I
other
guess
choice to
maybe
go
that
on,
takes,
right?
Right. And that takes some moxie, I guess.
Oh, for sure. And how do you do that with your mentees? To kind of give them that map as well? Or obviously, every instance and every example is different. But is that kind of the groundwork that you lay for them when they're looking at setbacks or challenges?
I think that's absolutely the formula. And I don't know that you can always be so concrete because when someone has experienced a setback, sometimes they're not in the right head to, look at it so in such a formulaic way.
Right.
But as a mentor, you can lead them through the process and they don't always even realize that they are having that little, let's take this apart, let's see what we learned, let's see how we build on the part of the experience that was constructive and created a base for further advancement moving forward, going onward.
Right.
Onward is a great word too.
I like that, yeah.
Because it kind of, gives you permission to say, okay, things are tough, but I'm going to forge ahead. And I like that word, onward.
I'm interested in this, the discomfort that comes along, the struggle that comes with growth. And sometimes just struggling through, whether it's a hard math problem, which always seemed to give me struggle.
Me too.
But that living in that moment of gear shifting is part of the growth. And that struggle and discomfort and just dwelling in that place for a little while and being okay with being uncomfortable is part of overcoming and moving onward. And I'm wondering how you either help someone struggle or supportively watch them go through the struggle. Because I think sometimes I know I have a tendency to step in and do or show, where the better approach would be to suggest and watch. And I'm wondering how you approach that, if I'm making any sense.
Yes, a lot of sense. And I hear your mothering style.
Don't tell my children.
That's what I was thinking too.
Okay, all right, enough of
And
that.
we all do that. We all do that because we hate to see somebody in pain and we want to fix it.
Exactly.
Right? So that's the natural thing. I think as a mentor, it's very effective to acknowledge. And I think that's also a very effective communication style with anyone. But so a person who's suffering wants to understand or feels bad and has had a setback or a failure. So to be acknowledged builds on that trust. It provides recognition that what you're feeling has value. And I think when that happens, it makes a path for that person to be able to say, okay, I feel bad about this. I may always feel bad about this, but I can put it in its compartment. And I can move through it and on from it. And, I read a parenting book when my kids were really, really young. And they talked about describing. So, and it was one particular little piece that was really interesting. So a child comes to show his mother this drawing that he did. And the mother said, "Oh, I like it so much." And the child was like, "But do you really like it? Do you really like it?" And the mother's like, "I told you I like it so much." And what they were saying is, don't go there.
Yeah.
Describe. "Oh, I see your picture. You made the sun very yellow, and the grass is so tall, like in our yard. And look at those nice clouds." And that child now feels acknowledged, and the work that they did feels appreciated and heard. And I think that transcends so many communications and interactions. And I think that's something exactly that I would apply in mentoring someone who's had some type of a failure or setback. Let's acknowledge what happened. And then let's move on from that. Onward.
Right.
So I obviously did not read that parenting book.
I'll get it for you. It's never too late.
It is too late. The damage is done.
I hope your kids aren't listening.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I pay them to listen every week, so... So I wonder what, there's a lot of Moxie of, forward momentum, overcoming. And there's also this side that is some self-acceptance and self-compassion, that we're not beating ourselves up when we mishandled a phone call or didn't quite make the point at the meeting. How do you cultivate self-compassion in your mentees that it's okay, there will be another time? I don't know if that is something that comes up in your sessions.
It does, and I'm a victim of that myself. I'm harder on myself than anybody else is. And that's something you have to learn to deal with also, and try and keep it in perspective. I think perspective is really, really important. So what really happened to that meeting? What did you say? What did people really hear?
Right.
You made a presentation and you forgot to make some key points that you wanted to. But let's talk about, what did the people in the room hear? They don't have your script.
Right.
They didn't know what you left out. Did you show up as a confident person? Did you present your material? Did you leave the room with people saying, "I respect that woman, she has something to say"? And did you leave yourself an opportunity now to do a follow-up? If you put everything on the table, what are you going to do to follow up with those people you just presented to? So again, I think the mentor has an opportunity, to Thorne's point again, to look at a situation slightly differently and without the sort of stress and anxiety that's attached to it. The person who feels like a failure is like down on themselves, that little voice is going, you didn't do it, you're not good enough, all those terrible things those voices say to us. But the mentor has an opportunity to change the perspective. And the mentee in a trusting relationship is most often open to hearing it. And sometimes it takes time. It can take time because you have to get past stuff.
That's the part of the growth, too.
That's the growth part. Right. And my mom used to say, little kids, little problems. Early in your career, small problems. Later in your career, big problems.
You sound like you know something about that.
Yeah. So, the bigger the risk, the further you can fall. But that doesn't mean you have to fall all the way, know? You grab that handhold as you're sliding down.
Right. So I'm very interested in this trust. I had some very wonderful mentors in graduate school, particularly. I never thought of myself as an academic, writing articles and scholarly pieces. And my advisors saw that I could do it. Maybe I wouldn't be top philosopher, but I could contribute something. And I, while I respected them so much, on some level I didn't trust that they saw things clearly. And as I look back on that, that was a misstep, a missed opportunity on my part. If I truly had trusted that they saw what I couldn't yet see, I could have maybe taken on some of those opportunities. And so I just personally find that a really interesting aspect of the trust.
Trust is something that has to be earned. Also, it may have been difficult for you to trust somebody that you perceived as being in control of your destiny in some fashion because they were professors and you were a student. I think a mentorship relationship sometimes that could sit outside of all of those things is a little safer. It's hard to have your boss be your mentor.
Right.
You're invested, they're invested, there's all
Right.
kinds of agendas there. And the trust piece, I think, has to open up those doors of exploration for the mentee. So it enables, the real trust enables the mentee to explore many different pathways.
Right.
But I also think that mentees shouldn't limit themselves to one mentor.
Oh, okay.
So, these are not lifelong partnerships.
Right.
And there's another wonderful piece of advice that I received on the way up, and that is to be the CEO of Abby. So when, as the CEO of Abby, I get to build my board.
Right.
And you think about a board has a compilation of people with many different perspectives and experiences and skill sets.
Right.
And so in my life, I have mentors, but there's somebody I might go to for professional advice, somebody financial advice, somebody personal advice, and parenting advice. So many different aspects of our lives that we need to explore, and challenges that come up expectedly, unexpectedly. And having a network of mentors is a wonderful way to explore that. So perhaps, Mary, some of those people might have been very beneficial to you in certain aspects of your life at that time as you were figuring out your educational path. And maybe it would have been great to have somebody else that wasn't around school that said, maybe, Mary, you should try this.
Yeah, I think that distinction that you made between a boss can't be a mentor is an important one, because there are other incentives and defining aspects of that relationship that muddy being a mentee relationship. So that's a point I will take with me.
But I like that. Be the, CEO of you and the board of directors. I love that.
Yeah. And that you can break your life down and go to different people for different things.
Right. And also some people can be extremely influential and bring great value to your life, but they don't want the obligation. Not everybody wants to be a mentor and have that label. And you don't always have to ask somebody, will you be my mentor? Will you be my Valentine? When there's something going on in your life and maybe you're starting a new business and you're exploring how do you transition from being a staff member to the boss.
Right.
And there's a huge culture shift in that and power shift in that. And maybe you go to somebody that you think could advise you or has done that before and simply invite them for a cup of coffee to talk about it. There's no labeling needed with that. And I think in that kind of scenario and setting those kinds of things up, you can have an array of people in your life that you can explore all kinds of things with, and you can try them on. Doesn't mean because it worked for that person it's going to work for you, but you take a nugget out of it, you take an idea, you take their idea, you personalize it, you make it your own, and then you try it on and see how it works.
Right. To finish up, there's one more aspect that Thorne and I both value this a lot, and it's something I've always admired writing for her, is gratitude. And you spoke about the high school student getting that opportunity, writing the thank you note. And I try to cultivate in my students and my own kids a gratitude process. And can you speak a little bit about gratitude in mentoring?
Gratitude in this context, I think, relates directly to respect. So when somebody does something for you, facilitates something, helps you, enables you, to thank them and express your true appreciation shows a certain degree of respect and maturity, and professional maturity and emotional intelligence that is essential for building that relationship, growing the trust, and encouraging that person to help you do more. Because it's, networking and building these relationships are stepping stones to networking with more people and building more relationships. And expressing gratitude and being professionally minded demonstrates that you're somebody that mentor will feel proud to recommend to the next person. So I think it's important. The gratitude piece is to take that moment and understand that you're grateful. You have to have that awareness that this experience, this conversation, this door opening has real value for me, and I am grateful for that. I'm not really sure yet what I'm going to do with it, but I want that person to know how grateful I am, and that just builds on, and I think it's you can't separate them.
Does that also make the mentor feel maybe a little more invested then? Is that part of the trust on, in that respect as well?
Yes, I think that's an interesting point. You can have a lot of thoughts in your head. Things are swirling around and bouncing around, but when you're forced, and you guys know better than anybody, to write it down and articulate it and put it in a sequence, a narrative, to create a narrative, there's a discipline in that I think helps recognize the gratitude and understand that there's value in the experience that you had. So it's very serving. It serves the mentee very well. And it's a great discipline. Writing thank you notes is a fantastic discipline. It's just as one example. I actually read an article that said when people receive a thank you note, it is one of those drivers of
endorphins.
Thank you, endorphins.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's an extraordinary type of gift that you're giving when you send a thank you note.
I did that right in my parenting.
Hey, girl.
So our last question, Thorin, go for it.
It's on me.
It's on you.
Well, I feel like the majority of this has been great advice, but do you have any specific Moxie advice for our listeners?
So going back to my definition of Moxie, of chutzpah with intention, I think that cultivating your own Moxie is a really fun project.
Oh, I like that perspective.
Yes.
Because, what better project to take on than yourself?
Yeah.
And you get so much pleasure and self-satisfaction out of having successful experiences which drive increased Moxie. And so take those risks. Every day do something that scares you. Be true to yourself about what worked and what didn't.
Right.
Do more of what works.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of the setbacks, because you can unpack them and find things to build on.
Yeah.
And embrace your Moxie, because it comes in many, many, many different flavors and shapes and sizes, but it's in there. And the key is to find ways to unleash it and then have fun.
I love that.
Absolutely. Well, we are so grateful that you took this time with us to talk about your Moxie and pay the Moxie forward through your mentoring. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so flattered that you invited me today.
Well, it was
and
our
I really
pleasure.
enjoyed this.
That was amazing. I felt like the whole episode was just takeaway after takeaway for people. What really resonated with you?
How to pick. But I feel like, like we talked about after we stopped recording, that every 5 minutes there was so much information, so many breadcrumbs of advice, basically. But I think the one thing that I really, really loved that she said was, be your own CEO. Be the CEO of Abby, be the CEO of Thorn, be the CEO of Mary, and set your own board of directors and kind of choose and pick who you want and their experience, their advice, their position in life, whatever it may be that you want in your circle that can be of help to you in whatever you may be doing. So I think that was such a great analogy, and it made me kind of go, oh, well, let me look at my own life, and do I have that? Who do I want in my on my board of directors?
I think that also goes into that notion of self-awareness,
right?
Identifying areas you want to work on or areas that you could use some support, and then going out and finding those people, because they're out there.
Yeah.
And they don't all have to be in a formal mentoring title.
No, not at all.
So I enjoyed her exploration of the relationship between a mentor and a mentee.
Yeah.
I found that to be very interesting, because it is a relationship that calls upon both parties to step up and deliver.
Right.
And I also really like the latent Moxie, that a mentor can see something that their mentee can't, and they can help draw it out.
Right.
And I think that's a really important role, to have that external validation of someone that you trust and respect and are grateful for. And I think those were all things that Abby touched on. So all in all, it was pretty powerful.
As I said, I'm like feeling so positive right now, and just flying high on positivity after talking to her.
And I just want to say, as the CEO of Mary,
this should be
I
good.
would have you on my board of directors.
You would?
I would.
You really want my input?
I do.
Oh, okay. Let me think of a few.
And you're supposed to say it back to me.
Oh, right. Well, you could be. What position do you want? What kind of seat do you want?
I want the Chief Thorin Officer, your chief advisor role.
Oh, okay. I think my husband would object to that, but maybe second in command?
Second in command. All right. Till next time.
See you there. This episode is sponsored by Northeast Ford and Catskill View Weddings.